Hi guys, welcome back to the Max Spence Business Podcast. Today I have a very special guest. His name's Cooper Allen. He's actually works at WFG Wealth Management Group. It's great having you on the show, Cooper.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate the time and look forward to seeing what we can stir up here.
Awesome. So I'm very excited as well. So why don't we do a little intro about who you are, where did you grow up, where did you go to school, and what made you sort of get into business?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we'll start right from the beginning. Was raised in the Barrie, Ontario area. Ended up was an athlete growing up. Well, whether it was a good one or not, it's completely subjective. But yeah, played sports growing up. Really had no idea what I wanted to do as I got near the end of high school. So I actually ended up doing my, I guess, victory lap year, so to speak. Went back for grade 13. Figured I'd work a little bit, save some money to go pay for school. Always had a bit of an interest in business, and ended up going to Nipissing University and took an accounting degree there. And it was a pretty flexible program in the sense of I didn't actually have to pick where I wanted to stream until year 2 or 3. So I think that was attractive. I was leaning towards accounting right off the get-go, but the ability to kind of get my feet wet in a little bit of everything and then go from there. What was kind of the right path, I guess, for me. It provided that flexibility as someone who really didn't know completely what I wanted to do just yet. And I think in hindsight, it ended up being the right decision. I mean, it's hard to look at what the alternative could have been. You never really know. If I would have done this, would that have happened? I think we always assume that whatever the alternative is, we always assume that it would be best case scenario. And I think people a lot of times live with a bit of regret in that sense, rather than accepting the fact that we have no idea what the alternative would have turned out as. But loved my time up there. Ended up spending 5 years in North Bay for at school, one in an employment role, and completely love it out there. A lot better in the summer than it is in the winter, that's for sure.
Yeah, I've got one of my friends is actually, I believe he's in North Bay doing something with aircraft maintenance or some sort of trades degree or something, and he says it's the winters are not too nice there.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, so why don't we actually jump into the educational part and accounting? So you said and I really feel like that's the same for a lot of people. You get out of high school and then it's like all this pressure to be like, all right, you got to figure out, at 17 years old, what you want to be in life for the next 50 years. And that's pretty crazy. So, so when you chose the accounting degree, what made you sort of go towards the accounting degree over maybe going into something like economics or maybe some other sort of field?
It's a good question. I mean, I think for me, what it came down to at the time, I mean, and my answer now versus my answer at 18 obviously is totally different, but at the time it was something that I enjoyed. Oddly enough, most people don't enjoy that stuff, but the other thing was it was something that allowed me to be flexible, really. I think the mistake that a lot of people make just comes from a place of not knowing what we don't know, and thinking that going to get an accounting degree means we're going to be an accountant in a firm somewhere, or going to get an economics degree means we're going to end up on Wall Street. And what I've now learned, fast forward many years later, is that that's not the case. It's more about, to me, the way I view at least any post-secondary education, unless you're going to do something very, very specific, like if you're going into nursing, you're going to be a nurse. But really, for a lot of the other degrees out there, it's really just tools in your toolbox. And I knew in hindsight, accounting is one of those things that I wasn't going because I loved the idea of working at an auditing firm, per se. I wasn't thinking about that at 18. It was kind of, it was a tool in a toolbox that I think could have been valuable wherever I ended up down the road. And I was actually looking in sports management as well, and kind of figured, it's probably easier to get a job in sports with a business degree than get a job in business with a sports degree, was kind of my mindset at the time. So yeah, I think anyone who isn't really sure of what they want to do, to your point, I think the mindset can't be pressure because this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. I think it should be more excitement because you get to go learn something that you're passionate about. And find a way to kind of take a little bit of everything while you're there, whether it be economics or marketing, or go take a religions and cultures or a psychology elective course and try to learn something, and just keep adding tools to that proverbial toolkit, so that when you do get out into the workplace, you can provide a lot of value no matter what the employer is.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I agree with you a lot with that. That's awesome. Yeah, just instead of focusing on like, oh, I'm going to be doing this for the next 50 years, just be like, you know what? It's just keep adding knowledge to your tool belt, which and because you never really know which direction you're going to go. But with accounting, if you're wanting to do business, accounting is really good to have on your tool belt. If you're wanting to start your own business, that's really good to have in your tool belt as well. So yeah, I like how you sort of thought that through and said, yeah, I think it's easier to get I think it's easier to get a job with sports management with a business degree than having a sports management degree and getting a business job.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny too, because I've had this little mindset shift. I'm a very much a black and white kind of right and wrong person, which can be a strength and it can be a weakness. And I think where it can be a weakness is when your idea of right and wrong isn't right, if that makes sense. So for me, I was very much in that kind of mindset that I was always raised on go get good grades. And then you go through the education system, and there's a lot of teachers that are very much like, it's like they tier people, they class people very much. And it's like, okay, well, if you don't do this, you're not going to be successful, kind of thing. So it's like, in my head, that was black and white for me. It's like, yeah, go get good grades, go to university, get your degree. Your degree is going to be your meal ticket. Well, not necessarily. If you don't do anything while you're there, you don't network, you do anything like that. And so my plan in terms of right and wrong at the time, I think the first message I have to high school students now is there's no such thing as right and wrong when it comes to your own education. There's right for you. And I think for me, like at the time, my plan was to just kind of follow that path that society wants to put us on, and say, yeah, let's go try to win the rat race. And when I got there, I'm like, okay, well, how do I win this rat race? I need to be more involved. What's going to make me stand out from every other student that's here? And I'm at a small school, and there's a lot of students here. So what about all other schools, other students at other schools, and some of them have better brand names than this thing. So how do I stand out? And right off the get-go, it was always go to the networking events, show up wherever I could, get involved wherever I could, build my resume. And I think for me, the real TSN turning point in that kind of beginning of the mindset shift, and what really almost started that kind of journey into the entrepreneurial world, Max, was just being 2 years in and also having that extra year at high school. I now had quite a few friends who had already done trade school or had got through their college degree. And while I was still accumulating debt, they were out in the real world making money. So everything that I had learned about what the meal ticket to success was, and going and following this path and doing the right thing, all of a sudden kind of got flipped on its head a little bit. And I started looking at, wow, that guy's fresh out of college, paid half of what I had to pay, and is now making 80 grand a year. And I'm on the hook for another 20 next year, and I still don't have a degree yet. So it was interesting. It just kind of broadened my perspective a little bit and made me realize, oh yeah, there's more than one path here. And that's when I started to explore entrepreneurship as well. Just because I started to realize I'm learning how to be a really good employee here, but they don't do much in terms of teaching you how to be an entrepreneur. And I now understand, yeah, entrepreneurship is not really something that can be taught. It's something you got to learn.
Yeah.
But yeah, just I think having a bit of an open mind with that stuff really helped change things for me, and really helped provide that motivation to go out and explore something new, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I actually I agree with that as well. Yeah, I've sort of seen like when I came back from the army, I had this sort of time period where I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And before leaving the army, I knew I wanted to do something in business. I was interested in, real estate before leaving the army, and like, the market and investing your money to, because my mom especially kept telling me when I was young, which was probably a very good benefit to have, was that because she didn't have somebody who told her this when she was younger, but like she was telling me about the effects of compounding interest, like when you put your money in and it just keeps compounding. And you keep saving up this money into, let's say an RSP or a TFSA or a some account with GIC or something, and you just keep building that, you just keep compounding that money. You keep putting, monthly or biweekly more contributions in, and then by the time your retirement, you have something to retire with. So that's sort of that. I think that's where it started for me, where that's where it started with me for the business sort of aspects of side of things. And then when I started networking and speaking with a lot of different people, there's a lot more paths to success than a lot of people maybe just think. Because if you don't really network with, different business people and you're not really in that world, you sort of see that there's only sort of one path that's laid out in front of you. And, maybe it's your parents' path that they've laid out in front of you. And that's pretty much, get good grades, like you said, in high school, then, go to university, get good grades there, and then get a job, right? Well, like you were saying, there's, I know guys that go into trades, and I know the trades are paying really well right now just because there's not enough tradesmen. Like I believe Canada has like a shortage of different types of tradesmen, that they are tradeswomen as well, that they need. And so they're getting like, some of these guys are coming out of the trades, or, by the time they're, like 22, 23, they're almost making 100 grand a year. Right. And then by the time, somebody that leaves with a degree is like, all right, well, now I have all this debt. Like you said, I've got like $40,000 in debt and now I have to get a job. And it doesn't really give you the opportunity when you have $40,000 in debt to go start a company, or start a business, right? Because you're like, okay, I need to start paying this off. So you go get that job, and then you're hooked into that job for a couple of years. And then, maybe then it becomes harder to actually leave that job and, then go start your own business. So when you, I want to sort of jump back to sort of the with university, what sort of aspects of the accounting, like, was it just like primarily, like, was it just concentrated in with accounting, or was there any other bits, like any other, like maybe electives that you sort of took that you found very valuable?
Yeah, we did our kind of, you had your general core business administration classes that everyone had to take. And then, so for the first couple of years, it was relatively standard. And then from there, we could branch off into the accounting route, to the marketing route, or whichever route an individual wished to pursue. So got to do a lot of the same classes with people throughout various disciplines throughout the degree, which was nice. And we really didn't start streaming accounting until probably third year, where I took 2 tax classes. I want to say 2 auditing classes as well. A couple of managerial accounting classes, and I think a couple of intermediate accounting classes as well. But even still, throughout the full degree, still to do strategy and policy, financial management, a couple of marketing courses here and there. There are some pretty cool. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to. So, out of those classes you mentioned, what were sort of the most, like, you learned the most and were the most important for you starting your actual own business? And you're like, damn, having that sort of, taking that class was really useful. Because I know for me, because I went to Algonquin College for a bit, but we can talk about that later, because I'm going to be hopping on your podcast as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what did you actually find that were sort of like the key ones that were like, okay, this is, when you got out of school and you started your own business, you're like, holy shit, okay, this actually makes sense, and this is actually a really good thing to have?
It's what's funny to me is that I attach myself more to individual moments or individual learning points rather than the course as a whole. So I can think of just different lessons that certain professors would teach. Denise LaFrance Horning was a phenomenal marketing professor, and almost probably one of the first days of marketing class in first year, it was always, her big thing is just innovate or die, innovate or die, innovate or die. And that's something that's kind of always stuck with me in terms of kind of just thinking differently, and kind of fearing that attitude of, well, this is just the way things have always been, so this is the way that they're always going to be. That's probably one of my biggest pet peeves now in business, when people say that, for sure, especially with how much change is occurring in the world. Diane Davis was a great professor as well. She did an entrepreneurship class, which, again, you can't really teach entrepreneurship, but at the same time, we read a book. It's called Heart, Smarts, Guts, and Luck. And it was one that really broadened my perspective, for sure, on what was out there on the other side of graduation, and what it actually took to be successful, and got me kind of curious as to, oh, it's not the guy with the university degree that's making it, or it's not all, you don't have to be the smartest guy in the room, and just like little kind of key lessons like that In terms of the more nuts and bolts applicability, personal and corporate tax with Jesse Davis was probably the biggest one. Again, he was a guy that, I don't know how he did it, but he made tax interesting. So there's not too many people that can say that, that's for sure. Personal tax, obviously very applicable to my own situation, and then getting into the business world as well, helping on that side was a big help. But I think that the nice thing too was like a lot of that stuff is entry level, right? Because in a lot of cases you have to teach the lowest common denominator. And I don't know how, like I have a lot of respect for professors in the sense of they have all of this education. So to come back in and teach a first or second year course in university, it's probably the most difficult thing in the world. You look at someone like Wayne Gretzky trying to coach hockey, it didn't go as well for him as many would have thought. So yeah, it's we got, I don't want to say bare bones education per se, but it was a lot of basics. And if I had specific questions, I would go out of my way to either research them myself or ask, go and spend some extra time with the professor and actually ask, hey, can we explore this a little bit further? Or just find people in the industry that already had experience there. But I would say those are the three people. And then Anahit Armanakian was another professor. I think even more specifically than the classes themselves, I think it was the people and the lessons that I was able to learn from them that really made the biggest difference.
Yeah, that is very true. Yeah, I sort of see like you said, like university gives you a very like in business, it gives you a very basic overview, right? Of like, you know, a lot of different subjects, and it sort of just opens your sort of mind to the world of business and all these different possibilities, right? It doesn't really go down too narrowly like, hey, we're going to teach you how to, you know, make $300,000 a year or become a millionaire, invest in different stuff. It's more like, you know, giving you the basics to be like, okay, I can learn about business, and there's all these different opportunities that I didn't know existed that I can actually go down. One of the best things I think about university is like you said, the networking. The networking is probably one of the biggest things that I believe you're not doing at university or college, and you're in business and you want to get into business, you're sort of really missing out, and you're missing out on a lot of opportunity that you could be getting if you're not networking with the professors. I really believe you need to network with the professors, because they'll have huge networks as well. It's like, I can't remember the term. Oh, it's like these super connectors, right? So you network with one person that's a super connector, and then they sort of bring you in, and then they, you know, that person has a huge network, and then they introduce you to like, you know, 10 to 20 or 30 other people that you didn't know existed, and you're like, holy crap, this is crazy. So finding those super connectors is really important. And networking with so I had this guy on. I think he's 25 or 26. No, I think he might be 23 or 24. But he went to Harvard Law School. And you know, he talked about Harvard Law and all that stuff, and it's great and stuff, but he wasn't too focused on the grades. Like, yeah, he did what he did to sort of get through it, and you don't do well, but he wasn't like one of the guys that's like, okay, I want to get 100% on everything, right? But he sort of found that he's in what's it called? Investors, like he works for a company that's pretty much an angel investing company. So they invest in new startups and stuff like that. And how he actually got involved with that company, which is, you know, working for an angel investor, a private equity firm that invests in startups, is apparent. What he said is it's hard to get into just because you have to have a lot of knowledge about the area before somebody wants to bring you on. But he was saying how he got into that role and joined that business was actually from school. The guy who actually started that company was 2 years ahead of him, and he sort of knew him from school. And then they sort of became friends. And then he had, you know, another group of guys that were a year ahead of them, started their own company in the legal space, like with like more technology-based stuff. And they were actually one of the companies that the angel investing company invested into. So he had this network of people, and it's just, you know, and he was saying that really just having, like, when you go to these schools, it's like because you'll meet a lot of people that are going to be doing stuff in the future in different aspects, and having that network is going to be really beneficial to you.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that's a perfect segue really into kind of where I'm at now. Cause I always wonder, one of the biggest, I mentioned kind of that mindset flip, that TSN turning point for me. Well, the second kind of flip, or the TSN turning point, was when I sat down with a guy who's now a really good mentor of mine in the financial services industry. who sat down and in 45 minutes taught me more about money than I learned in my whole degree. So I'm sitting there now in hindsight looking, going, did I really need to spend 20 grand a year? But then I also look at the other side of the coin, to your point about networking, is that everything that I've done in my life, or at least everything that's current in my life right now, from six string management to the LCL Collective to my role in the financial services industry, as well as you alluded to, that is all through some sort of connection that was made while at university. So I'm a big believer, to your point exactly, is that when I was getting involved in my first couple of years, I wasn't getting involved thinking that someday I'd be behind the mic doing a podcast with somebody, or that I would start a consulting firm, or that I would even really get into financial services for that matter, which is, again, something we can touch on, was an industry that I really didn't think I would end up in at all. But I wasn't getting involved thinking that was going to be the case. I was getting involved to really, I think at the beginning of it, really, it might have just been A, wanting to help people, and B, to kind of broaden the resume a little bit. But then the more I did that, the more I actually became genuinely interested in other people. And when you get out of your little bubble, you move away to a different town, you start seeing different events, different perspectives on things. I became really interested in, what is it that you're doing, and why are you doing what you're doing, and what was the journey that led you to be here? And I think that ended up being a really big strength for me.
Yeah. I agree with that as well. So yeah, let's actually segue into pretty much starting your own company when you got out of university. So it's six string management. So how did that actually come about, and how did you find, actually, are you still currently running that business, or have you sort of put that a bit on the back burner and you're focusing more on the financial service business that you're running right now?
Yeah, for sure. And six string is definitely something that has scaled back since I did originally start it. And it was something that, as a result of meeting a lot of great people throughout my university experience, whether that was actually at school itself or in the community, I ended up having some people come to me just for advice on, hey, I'm looking at this startup. What can you do here? I want to move to this next step in my career, but I'm just strapped for time. And originally for me, it just started with, yeah, happy to help you out. And as I started helping a few people out here and there, just providing my 2 cents, I learned that one of the things I enjoyed doing most was taking a bird's eye view on whether it was a company or an individual, and just saying, yeah, how can we help? And I think that comes from a sports background, really, in terms of studying other teammates, how they can have. I was a baseball guy, so how do you make your next at bat better than the last one? Is the pitcher throwing something that we didn't pick up on the first time, and just always trying to get a little bit better? So when I go into the business world, it's the same thing, whether it's a person or an organization. How do we get a little bit better every single day? So I always, like, that was something that I found I enjoyed quite a bit. And I'd helped a few people out, really just kind of pro bono before I had a business. And I said, you know what, there's a bit of an opportunity here. It's not going to be, it never really started as something that was ever going to be a full-time thing for me. I figured it was just going to be part-time. You know what, rather than just kind of running it under my own name, I might as well create a brand, create a bit of a firm, be able to document some of the work that's being done here, the successes that are being had. And it was interesting, as soon as I kind of got serious there, and in the eyes of other people, now all of a sudden it wasn't just me helping. It was like, oh, Coop's got something on the go now. I didn't really change what I was doing or how I was helping people. It just, I started documenting what I was doing, and all of a sudden some other people started to take note, and a couple other opportunities came up, and bounced around from industry to industry a little bit, helping clients in different industries. Focused quite a bit in on the music industry, which is where the primary efforts still are in six string management. Still helping out an artist and a couple of other organizations as well. Obviously, that industry has felt the brunt of COVID more than a lot of other industries, for sure. And with the success of the financial education firm and that opportunity that's in front of me, music has a lot of the opportunities have I've kind of scaled back on a little bit myself, and tried to put other people in roles that I was previously fulfilling for certain individuals or organizations. So, but yeah, that was the gist of how it got started. Really, it was again, just through networking in university, not just on campus, but in the community as well, taking a genuine interest in people. And the more you do that, the more you'll find out what you like and what you don't like. And for me, consulting just seemed to be something that I happen to like, and didn't come with its without its share of challenges, that's for sure. I mean, when you're just finishing up a university degree, who's to say that I'm going to be able to provide anything valuable? I knew I wanted to help people. I knew that I could provide some value, but there's kind of that ageism thing, that experience thing that comes into play with some people, where it's like, yeah, what could this kid bring to the table? So there's definitely a bit of a chip on your shoulder when you're starting out with yourself. Um, and everything was a learning experience, really. It was. I mean, I think that's um, if you wait your whole life to do until you know everything and until something's going to be perfect, you'll wait your whole life and you'll never actually do. So for me to kind of throw myself in the fire a bit and learn the first little bit, I don't want to say the hard way, but not be perfect in the beginning and just kind of master a craft over the last couple of years has been a lot of fun. Sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I really like one piece of advice that you actually gave there was when you started scaling it back, you started to put other people, maybe subcontractors into these roles to help your clients. And that's one great thing, is that if you start a business, you don't have to just cut and dry and end everything with it, is because you have relationships with clients, and other businesses will value that. So when you're able to connect, when you're able to connect a subcontractor to that client that says, hey, maybe I need some help with branding or marketing this new song, or, with the sound production of this new song. And they're like, hey, do you have anybody? You can connect them to somebody that does that, but you can also take a fee for doing that because you have the connection to the client, which is what a lot of big companies do, like Amazon does, and Google and Facebook. A lot of big companies do this, where they have the connection to the client, and then they sell that connection to another company that's wanting to provide a service to that client. So that's what I think is really great, because a lot of people might think that, hey, I have to end that cold and dry, I'm going to go off and do this now, I'm not going to bother with any of that. Well, there's still quite a bit of money that could be still made, and a lot of value that you could give by connecting those clients to other great people in that sort of sector. So that I really like I really like that. So let's actually jump to the LCL Collective now, and you starting that. So was that sort of at the same sort of time as Six String, or was it sort of you moved from well, yeah, you're still running it, but did you sort of start putting Six String more on hold, or was this when you started at WFG that you started the LCL Collective?
Yeah, a bit of a mixed bag, I guess, and I'll tell that story here in a minute. But I think to your point again, Max, there's a great reflection too, because for me, what I realize is I think where a lot of people who are like me get frustrated, a lot of people, because I'm very much rooted in, I want my life to be in service of other people. I really like helping people, and that's just kind of who I am. And what I realize is that when a lot of people try to help others, where they really get caught up is trying to be everything to everyone. And fortunately, what I was able to realize, I don't want to say recently, within the last couple of years, anyways, is that you can't be everything to everyone, and sometimes as a result of that, you have to scale back in certain things, and that's another good mentor of mine slash friend that I met at university that I do a podcast with, Ray Mulville. We were kind of having a conversation one day, and I basically just said to him, like, Ray, I want to do two things or three things 100%. I'm tired of having my hand in every single pot and putting 70% into it. That's just not me. And you can't really pour from an empty cup. So even though having 15 things on the go might seem like we're helping a lot of people, if I'm helping them to 60 or 70% of my capacity, because my focus time isn't on them, I'm not really helping them. So that's what I think. For me, that's why I value networking so much. That's why I value what you're doing with your podcast, and just connecting with people without an agenda, without a sales pitch. Because if we can connect, the more good people we can connect ourselves with, I always want to be the guy who knows a guy or knows a girl or knows a person who's able to help somebody. So Max, you may come to me one day for advice and I have no idea how I can personally help you. But if I can make one small connection, then that makes all the difference in my opinion. And I think part of the reason I have that perspective is because a lot of what I do today has been based on referrals through to other people from somebody. So somebody took 30 seconds out of their day to think of me, and now I owe a lot of what I'm doing today to them based on a 30-second referral.
True. True.
But
Yeah.
I think that starts on the ground floor with building that relationship at a previous point in your life.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So what yeah, I like that as well. So how did the LCL Collective come about, and you starting that? Is that your podcast, or is that something
Yeah,
big that's just your podcast right now? Is there anything other that's attached to it, or is that just so you're podcasting right now?
yeah. So Collective is just kind of more broad scale. Right now, it's a digital media channel, kind of just a fun little side project for us. Not something that we really plan to monetize. We've got some bigger ideas for it for sure in terms of how to scale it. But the basic premise of it and how it started, it's since evolved. But it was Ray and myself having a conversation around. Excuse me. Him and I like I said, he was a really good mentor for mine as I started sixth string, as I started studying to be in the financial services industry with the insurance license, investment license, uh, um, kind of balance that with a few other things. Um, and really, we'd have all these great conversations about the future, which first and foremost, I think for people our age, that's the best thing you could ever do for yourself is to look at your circle and ask yourself, are people talking about where they're going to be and what they're going to do? Or are they talking about their high school glory days? Because that's the biggest difference maker in my life, just from a mental aspect, has been the types of people that I've surrounded myself with and the conversations we've been having. And if that's a calculated effort for you to talk about the things that most people don't want to talk about, I think it gives you a massive advantage. But Ray and I would have these types of conversations. And I went through a big personal growth and development journey and listened to a lot of great podcasts, Lewis Howes, Gary Vaynerchuk, Ed Mylett. And actually, one of the goals I'd set out to begin the year was basically, let's study the biography of one successful person every week, because it'll teach you a couple of things. It'll teach you, hey, what are the common traits that all of them have? But when you learn their stories, it also takes all of your excuses out of play, because you realize, well, if that guy can do it and he came from far worse than me, surely I can do it as well. So I'd start reflecting on other people's experiences, coupling that with my own experience, my own learning points from business as well. And I'd have these conversations with Ray about the future. And we got off a call one day. We kind of wrapped it up after speaking for probably like 45 minutes. And it just clicked with us. Like, why are we not recording this? And then we've learned so much from so many great mentors. If we just keep this to ourselves and we don't share it, the one thing I always say is knowledge isn't power unless it's applied and unless it's shared. So I'm like, why are we not spreading what we're learning right now to the rest of the world? And we have the means to do it with podcasting, with social media, and we don't need to have 100,000 followers. If it helps one person, that's a win. And it's the same conversations we're already having anyways. We might as well just record it, especially so that if in 10 years down the road, we're perceived as successful by everyone else, and now they look and we're trying to give back and give advice to people, and all of a sudden we're not relatable, we can look back and say, no, we were recording this stuff in our 20s, and just kind of document that journey. And from the idea of documenting the journey, it eventually just developed into, well, yeah, why don't we also provide platforms for other entrepreneurs to come and share their journeys as well? Because there's just as much to be learned from what they're doing and as to what we're doing as well. So yeah, it's expanded, and we've now interviewed a lot of great people. Where it's going to go from here, I'm not entirely sure. We've got kind of a few ideas in the works, but it's not. It's just our kind of fun side project to do what we can to give back. It's not. I don't have any plans to really try to monetize it or make a business out of it. But you never say never. You never know what the future will bring.
Yeah, that is very true. And yeah, that's sort of the same with mine. How this sort of started was this like I just wanted to network. So I sort of saw it as a networking standpoint, because like I was trying to get meetings with people, like, coffee meetings or something. Like, this was before COVID, when, you could actually ask to have a coffee meeting with people, and people would be like, yeah, you could actually see them face to face instead of doing a Zoom call. uh, but yeah, so I was like, all right. So like I was kept like, I kept trying to have like just talk to like these really interesting entrepreneurs just about like real estate or business and business in general, and sort of just get, uh, like how they sort of did it and advice and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, why don't I do podcasting? Because I'm going to be having these conversations with people, and I sort of want to build my social brand as well. And I want to I want to put this onto YouTube and put it onto Instagram and sort of build like a brand around business as well. So that's how it sort of started for me. And, I haven't monetized it yet, but that's where I sort of want to take it to, is be able to turn this into monetization, but also have really great entrepreneurs on the podcast as well that can give some great advice and value to people that are maybe listening, that are in their 20s or 30s, or whatever age really. So yeah, so I actually let's segue into your the next sort of subject we're going to talk about is getting working at WFG, and how did that sort of come about, and what is that sort of like for you right now?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny, when I graduated with a degree in accounting, and had some opportunities to get into the traditional industry, whether it be with a finance institution. I won't mention any names, or an auditing firm, or whatever the case may be. I looked at a few of the people that were a couple of years ahead of me, and just looked, and I'm like, that's not my path. Um, and I love the principles you talked about kind of early on, about compound interest, and having that conversation around just the basic wealth principles to help get people further ahead. Love having that discussion, but I mean, at the same time, I also didn't really want to be that guy at the party, if that makes sense, in terms of, yeah, Max, you've got an extra $200 every month, 150 of it needs to be going towards this, and pay yourself first, Max, save 10% of your income. And um, it's great to have those discussions. I think with a lot of students, like in high school, and maybe early in university, when they haven't got kind of sucked into a lot of the debt traps that some of the older generations are already in now. It's a lot harder to look at an older generation that maybe has two young kids and a mortgage payment, and say, okay, well, stop going on that family trip, because you need to start saving for your retirement. And now I'm not giving them financial advice at that point. I'm telling them how to live their lives. And there's kind of that awkward line to draw a little bit. And that idea of the industry did turn me off a little bit. And I did want to kind of go my own route, and really be an entrepreneur instead of an employee. So I wasn't really looking at that industry at all. One thing when I did finish up school, though, that I did know was, okay, well, my mentors already taught me more about money in, like I said, in 45 minutes than my whole degree. So clearly this accounting degree wasn't the meal ticket that I thought it would be to financial freedom. So I need to go learn more somewhere. And I figured at some point I'd probably go back and get, whether it was a CPA or the MBA, some sort of designation. I also wanted a break, though, from the traditional school setting, because I was having so much fun doing what I was doing in the entrepreneurial world already, that I wanted to go out and do. I didn't want to read anymore. I just wanted to do. You can only read about doing push-ups for so long before you actually have to do the push-up. And so when I got out there, I knew, though, that if I didn't have some sort of course to go on the side, that I'd lose it. Like, there was no way that a year from now I was going back into school. So my brain just would have been so disconnected from kind of studying that it just wouldn't be enjoyable. So I actually ended up picking up and deciding that I was going to go and get my investment and insurance licenses. And it started as a part-time learning opportunity, really, just a chance to maybe not even get licensed when all was said and done, but just study for the courses. You can go and get them done for less than the cost of one university course, and learn more about the textbook insurance investment knowledge that really is going to set you way further ahead. It's dry content, don't get me wrong, very, very dry content, but I found it relatively interesting. But the more I studied that content, I also took it upon myself to study the rest of the industry too, because I started to just kind of take an interest in the industry more or less. And as I was learning this stuff, I was like, oh, it would be cool to go out and teach people some of this stuff. So I would look at the industry and the different companies that I could potentially work at. And WFG was one that allowed me, well, it allowed me a couple things. First of all, to come in part-time, so I didn't have to give up the six string gig at all. Gave me kind of that flexibility of being independent, not having a boss, not having to hit quotas was huge. But it was also the one company out there that was education based rather than sales based. So it allowed me to actually, when I'm sitting down with someone, kind of go over really the concepts and strategies out there that we mostly as the middle class in Canada don't necessarily know. So that was, the more I actually studied the industry and studied what was going on about there, like we could have a whole podcast on the myths that are out there about the industry. But I mean, when push comes to shove, the easiest kind of way to break it all down in about 30 seconds is pre-COVID, 48% of Canadians were within $200 of not being able to meet their debts every month. We're in the best country in the world. How does that happen? How do we have companies that have been around for 100 years that are considered some of the best institutions, not just in Canada, but in the world, profiting billions of dollars a quarter? Meanwhile, half of our country is within $200 of not being able to make payments. That to me comes down to education. And I have some of the best business partners, some of the best mentors in any business in the world right now. And I don't even think it's close. And if people met them, they totally get what I mean. From self-made multimillionaires to Olympic athletes, to, yeah, again, millionaires who've come out of retirement and to help us out part-time and really get our business off the ground to be able to help the middle-class Canadian. And it's just, the bottom line is that it comes down to a lack of education. And I really got tired of complaining to a lot of those mentors that why is this not being taught in high school? Forget an accounting degree. The fact that I had to pay 20 grand a year to not learn it. It should be taught in high school. Just the basic principles around money that you had mentioned, and a lot of other things that we go over with people as well. But really it was, yeah, I saw a need, and for me it's about righting a lot of wrongs and actually truly going out and helping people. And the opportunity side of it is really just a bonus to me. One of my business partners came from a teaching background, and we talk all the time about how even if we never got paid to be in this business, we would still teach this stuff to people part-time because we think everyone deserves to know the information. And I think the general landscape of the business world right now will allow the change that's needed to occur. I think it helps that we're in front of the greatest wealth transfer in human history coming up, with the baby boomers starting to reach their retirement years. And really just, I think, if anything, this pandemic has taught people that the institutions that we all think are there to support us, in a lot of cases, well, when something like this happens, we're kind of on our own. I think people are more accepting now to the idea that, oh yeah, you're right. How come the vast majority of us in 1900 weren't getting any further ahead, and you fast forward 120 years and the numbers are still the same? Why is that the case? So it's been a good run so far. Love what we're doing. The mission of No Family Left Behind is a very easy one to get behind, and then also the opportunity to be independent as well. Like I said, just the flexibility that comes with that is absolutely massive. And just the way they've structured their system. We kind of chatted a bit off air about what might the future look like for me in financial services, and would I ever maybe want to venture off and kind of do my own thing. But really their system is designed to, the way I look at it, I just look and go, why would I want to leave? And that's a whole separate conversation about the model and how it works. And but they've created a really good culture there, where their top, whatever you want to call them, top agents, top whatever, aren't picking up and leaving because of how well they treat their people, and the mission and the culture that's been created there. So our biggest thing really is moving as many people from financially unstable to financially secure as possible. And for me, it's not just I'm from Barrie. It's not just a hometown thing. What I realized was I could be a financial planner my whole life, and even if I helped one family a day, I started running the math. I'm like, I would never get out of my hometown. But I also think this information is too valuable not to be shared with the masses. So for me, the mindset has kind of shifted too from, don't get me wrong, I'll help people from a planning standpoint as well. But we are expanding pretty aggressively and trying to get offices open across Ontario and really start to help a wider spread of people for sure. And it's an undertaking, like I said, that I'm not going to be able to do on my own. So we've found some pretty good people to help us out along the way, and are going to be on the look for other good people as well. So in addition to helping families, in addition um, to really kind of looking at an overall client plan, some of my work as well is also in building and training and educating and providing opportunity to other good people who want to help families along the way as well. So that's I guess the Coles notes of everything. I'm not even sure if that answered your original question.
No, no, that's great. That's what I love is just, just telling the story about how you sort of got into it and why does it make you excited to actually work at that company. So with the WFG is so is it sort of like a little bit of like a franchise model, like let's say like Royal LePage or something like that, where you can open up your own offices? Like I know in Ottawa there's Royal LePage, but there's two different I think there might be two or three different types of franchises in Ottawa that are different sort of names. So they're like Royal LePage Team or Royal LePage Performance. Is that sort of the same for WFG?
Yeah, it's a pretty, I'm not even sure how I would describe it. It's a pretty, I like to say it's a unique hybrid between kind of that franchise model, that real estate central brokerage model, combined with the traditional kind of banking, corporate finance model is the way that I like to describe it. And I actually just finished up reading, I know you're a real estate guy, so you probably read this one as well, is the RE/MAX story, Everybody Wins. I just finished up that book in terms of how they came into existence from the 70s through till now. And obviously there's some differences from industry to industry, but I was reading through and a lot of the key principles were very similar. And that's so if anyone's kind of looking at wanting to figure out what this company is all about and what we're looking to build kind of as a branch of the company here in Ontario, the two books to read would be actually Steve Siebold's Unauthorized Truth about WFG, and then Everybody Wins, the RE/MAX story. And there's a lot of parallels that you can draw there that are pretty interesting for sure.
Okay, awesome. So I know we're coming to the end here. So what are your sort of future goals with WG? Like you said, you're more you want to stay with WFG and instead of starting your own let's say firm or something. So what sort of what are your sort of future goals, and where can people actually find out more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing to stay connected with me, I've become pretty active on LinkedIn lately. So if you look up Cooper Allen on LinkedIn, definitely connect there. Whether we're talking about one of the businesses I have on the go, or you just want to have a coffee and kind of shoot the breeze, or if there's any way that I can help you, if you're someone out there who maybe has a pitch or is looking for some feedback from some people, I'm more than happy to connect with anyone. I've always tried to do that wherever I can, is just say yes to opportunities, say yes to helping people wherever I can, and just create conversation. In terms of future goals, for me, it's and it's interesting that you asked that too, Max, because if you had asked me 2 years ago, I would have told you, what do you mean future goals? Like, that stuff's cheesy. And the biggest difference for me in business, I don't think, is necessarily a skill set that's been acquired, but more so understanding who I am, knowing my why, and kind of thinking about the future and setting up what I want that to look like. And on a professional side, really, it's creating a platform, not just across Ontario. That's the short term for sure, is Ontario, eventually expanding down into the States as well. And really just setting up as many distribution centers as possible, so that we can ultimately help as many families as possible on the client side and provide opportunity to as many people as possible on the career side. Because like I said, knowledge isn't power until it's shared and applied. So right now we're kind of in the applying stage of it, and as we continue to apply and expand and grow, then we're going to be able to share it with more people and help more people along the way. So long term, I'll scale it as big as this thing will let me. I've kind of stopped putting a glass ceiling on my targets. I mean, don't get me wrong, you got to have some realistic targets for sure as well. But I've kind of broken it down in terms of, okay, well, what are going to be my stretch goals versus what are going to be my momentum goals. And the momentum ones are the more realistic ones that you can hit to build momentum. But then I have a lot of stretch ones as well in terms of just um, big picture stuff to really start making a true difference in people's lives. So um, yeah, that's the big one is scaling the WFG business quite a bit. Six string will be, and LCL will just be other, again, tools in the toolkit that I can leverage to help people wherever I can. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. That's how I measure success. I don't measure it in terms of a specific dollar value. I measure it more in terms of people that I'm able to impact. Um, that number is, I think it's a healthy number right now, but it's nowhere even close to where I want it to be. So I really look forward to having this conversation with you in 3-5 years and see how much it's even changed.
All right, awesome, awesome. Yeah, well, that's amazing. So thank you for coming on the show, Cooper. Yeah, you gave a lot of great advice for schooling and sort of your story and your journey and stuff. Yeah, if people want to find out more about Cooper Allen, look him up on LinkedIn. He posts, he's posting different stuff there. He also has his podcast as well, which is the LCL Collective. But yeah, it was great having you on the show, Cooper.
Yeah, I really appreciate the time and love doing this stuff with people. So if anyone's watching this, whether you thought we were great or we sucked, let us know either way.
Awesome.